Hi, everybody. It's another day, another time to record some conversational topics about Age of Sigmar from yours truly, Jeremy Visser. I'm recording today Fyreslayers for changes 2.0 to 3.2, but mostly this is our second episode of AoS Shorts. Like I said, the entire season will be me covering all the faction changes for In Your Phase Media between 2.0 to 3.0. And today we're speaking an army that holds a special place in my heart, and that's Fyreslayers, as you can tell by the giant background in the back. Fyreslayers, if you don't know much about me or Fyreslayers, we have a very special relationship because it is the army I played for almost 2 years and eventually won ITC 2019 with them, the circuit for North America. I think some exploits for me. It was and I want to share, not to, trying to be humble a little bit here, but for me it was impressive for that army is that I played them before their 2.0 change and I played them after their 2.0 change, and having a 95% winning rate for GTs, majors, basically 2-day events with 50 more people over a whole period of a year is impressive, and I don't think I will ever live up to that record ever again in my career. But let's talk about Fyreslayers and how they changed from this powerhouse of 2.0 into this powerhouse in 3.0. One of the big change and from 2.0 to 3.0 is the removal of the original faction battalions. And if you don't know what that means because you're newer to the game and you came around 3.0, they used to be paid battalions in 2.0, where they would cost points and they would add specific rules, and they had specific unit restrictions, not as much as they are today in 3.0, which are more like around battlefield roles. So those battalions used to be more aligned to war scrolls. And the biggest change from 2.0 to 3.0 is Fyreslayers lost Lord of the Lodge. Lords of the Lodge has been around since 1.0. It used to be a battalion 1.0 as well, which fundamentally was all the same as the 2.0 one, except for a very distinctive difference, which was that instead of models being wholly within 12 inches, it was models all units wholly within 12, got to double activate. And the reason was so powerful outside of the extra combat prowess in 2.0, sorry, was the fact that they got the extra piling move. For an army that is slow like Fyreslayers, 4 inch at a time, having any additional movement for especially big blocks of infantry was incredibly powerful in dictating if you were going to be able to sneak objectives or get into positions for a better turn mechanic. And with the fact that you could pile in after charging, it would allow you to basically do your first activation, kill the enemy unit, and then pile in 3 inches to get engaged with another unit. And they had Hearthguard Berserkers, which were the battalion unit, had 2-inch range, which really meant like sometimes if people wanted to protect themselves from that mechanic, they had to effectively double bubble wrap, and they have to basically give up a lot of board control space because they didn't want to get clipped from both units effectively, or both activations. But anyway, enough about 2.0. Let's talk about 3.0 changes for Fyreslayers. Hearthguard Berserkers are still fucking phenomenal. They haven't really changed in any sense of the word. One of the kind of downside of being a foot specific 4 inch at a time army was a lot of battle tactics are kind of hard for Fyreslayers to score. And for example, the ones are Savage Spearhead, which requires two of your units inside the enemy deployment zone, is a little bit hard to score if you play a 2.0 version of the army. There is also the scoring 2 points at a time, and so forth and so forth. But they're actually all remedied fairly easily by list design changes, which is a huge important thing we're going to talk about today. The traditional 2.0 Fyreslayer list was mostly Hearthguard Berserkers. The book doesn't have a lot of unit selection, war scroll selections, but it had a really, really good one, which was Hearthguard Berserkers. And now that the 3.0 introduces all these additional dynamics on how to score rather than just sitting on objectives and achieving things and having monsters, all of a sudden magma drops are looking a lot more interesting. All of a sudden orcs are looking a lot more interesting because there's more monsters. There's also the fact that rune smitters, which were always pretty good, now almost a guaranteed auto take, because the one turn you're going to use their magma tunneling, you want it's to just make sure you score Savage Spearhead. There is just a lot of good things about 3.0 for Fyreslayers, in the sense that it's going to force the army to be a little bit more diverse in types of unit selection. In terms of sub allegiances, one of the big change as well is that it made 4 of the different sub allegiances in Fyreslayers actually interesting to take in 3.0. Hermdar was clearly like dominating like 2.0, and that's because the game was revolving around just the objectives, and Hermdar did one thing incredibly well, which is basically fight on the objectives. It had the ability to strike first. It was immune to battle shock as long as they were close to wholly in range, 12 inches of an objective or the enemy territory, if I remember correctly. And they also had, just like with Lords of the Lodge, it became very easy to just say, yeah, I'm going to take big blocks of infantry. They're going to be immune to battle shock. They're going to get these one of them is going to get at least this double activation mechanic. And they're just going to duke it out and broad out on objectives. And for a while, for 2019 in the meta, before 2020 meta, it was probably the peak brawler army in the game. It could take a punch, it could deal as much as it would take, and it played in the activation wars because Hermdar allowed you to activate before and at the start of the combat phase, which are still true today. It's not like Hermdar has changed, but the changes of 3.0 has introduced, I would say, appealing reasons to look at Greyfjord, appealing reasons to look at Lofnir, and appealing reasons to look at Vostarg. Like Vostarg was always kind of the periphery before, like where people were like, well, they're actually not, they're good, they're actually useful to like they're an interesting choice to take in 2.0, but they're even more interesting to take in 3.0. It comes down to the fact that their initial mechanic of having the automatic 6-inch run on the first turn, the fact that their command trait is an aura of run and charge, really alleviates like some of the problems Fyreslayers have with 3.0 battle tactic scoring. So that's a huge boon to them. So you'll probably see some versions of Vostarg. And for context of the audience, you have to really watch out for that first turn in Vostarg, because they can be incredibly sneaky fast. You got smaller boards now, which is important for Fyreslayers. That is fundamentally an upgrade for a slow army. And they're an army that can easily walk using the correct rune of Zeal in first turn. I don't think you should as Vostarg, but a lot of people do, have a potential of 8-inch movement plus 6-inch run, and then run and charge on the first turn. So you're looking at some very fast dwarves on turn 1. So very, very careful about not setting up yourself for these potential charges. Now Lofnir is probably going to be one you're going to start to see a lot more often as well, and that's because it's designed around fundamentally some of the better units for scoring secondaries for Fyreslayers. It gives you the ability to get more mount traits for your magma drafts. It also unlocks the ability to take an extra magma draft. It also allows you to have souped up versions of the Auric Earth Guards, which are the shooters, basically the guys with the muskets. And those musket men are very important for 2 reasons. A, they protect smaller, less durable heroes in the Fyreslayer, not the ones on magma drafts, just the foot ones. And also they're incredibly effective at basically trying to control the pace of other enemy monsters. They have a rule basically that they're in extra damage and shooting, so they're basically usually base of damage 1, but against monsters they're damage 2. And on a 4-up, if you do at the end of the shooting phase, if you have done any damage to a monster of their guns, it reduces their movement speed by half, and I believe it also makes them -1 to hit. So in terms of argument, Lofnir wants MSU, basically Auric Herb Guards, because of the fact that you're going to build your army, you're hitting your power hitters around maybe 1 Herb Guard block, some magma drafts, and the rest are just Auric Herb Guards. and I would imagine at least one runesmitter and maybe like a unit of 10 or a curve guard to just deep strike in the backfield for Savage Spearhead, even though Magma Drops will probably easily get that for you now. But you know, their command ability is incredibly powerful because the way it works is a rune priest, or basically a rune smith or a rune master, in the shooting phase can point to an enemy unit for one command point and say that my entire auric shooting, like rune, every unit on the board that's auric Earth Guard gets +1 to hit and +1 to wound against that. That is an incredibly powerful ability, especially when you look at their base shooting is a 4-up and their base wound rolls is a 3-up and it's Ren 1. Now here's the sneaky part about that. That ability is issues in the order, you know, from that one character, but none of your actual units are receiving that order. So you could technically also, if you have a bigger unit of Lofnir, also give themselves all-out attack in case your opponent still has the ability to make himself -1 to hit. So you can kind of wash out their effective modifiers and always hit on 3s. Outside of Lofnir, we got Greyfjord, and Greyfjord is a character-heavy list, lodge, and it's designed around basically having blocks of characters and also unlocking 3 additional artifacts of power for just being the allegiance. And the reason I say this one, I really personally like this one because there is something to say about a block of 3 Grimwrath Berserkers just basically hauling ass down the center of the table, and they in that army they get to all activate at once with 1 CP. So you would resolve one hero, and then if there's a friendly hero within 3 inches of that hero, then that's Greyfjord, you can activate that hero as well immediately after their resolve, and you can keep doing that as many heroes that are within 3 inches of that initial command user. So in a sense, you can have a little small, like 330 point death ball of 3 Grimwrath Berserkers, and they all have very interesting oaths now, which are they buff up, that makes them a little bit more feasible. I like the fact that since you get extra 3 artifacts, you can make a really bad monster, like really badass monster hunter Grimwrath now, and with the oath plus the artifact that the Grimwrath Berserker gets. There is also the fact that there's Greyfjord plays very well with the idea of having Gotrek in the list, because there's another oath that gives the Grimwrath Berserker +1 to hit if they're near an allied unit. There's just so many little cool things about Greyfjord I enjoy. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the most mechanically, the most mechanics around 3.0, but it is one of the most fun and actually quite powerful in some cases, because it's really annoying to have to commit resources to kill a one model unit, especially when they don't usually give up points. Like, they don't give points for prey, they don't give points for really almost any of the battle tactics. They're just obnoxious. 6 wound, so 2 models for objective scoring, and they're just you don't want to ignore them. They will hit hard, and they will really be scary if they let them in combat. So in the sense of, if you wanted to think about it this way, if you took 4 Grimwrath Berserker and Gotrek, which is about the same amount of points for both of them, you would have a tiny block of 4 Grimwrath Berserkers and then Gotrek. So effectively, you have 2 Gotreks on the table in a sense. So it's quite fun because they mechanically play very similarly, just one without the Mortal Ruin and one with the Mortal Ruin. The other point I want to bring up is that Gotrek actually fits, sadly, in every Fyreslayer list now, and that just comes down to the fact that they lost Lord of the Lodge. If you want to talk about a guy who does basically what Lord of the Lodge did in a compact form, Gotrek does that now. So there's an argument to be made that effectively Fyreslayers didn't lose Lord of the Lodge, they just gained Gotrek. But you know, it feels at this point in the meta, you could say Gotrek fits in any order list. So I wouldn't recommend, you know, making that argument too much. But I personally am looking forward to playing with, you know, lots of 10-man blocks of Hearthguard Berserkers, one Runesmitter, and a 10-man unit of Auric Earthguards, and just trying to play the game. Because once again, one of the things to watch out of Fyreslayers is if they're in Hermdar, they're one of the few armies that gets strike first mechanics, which really can punish your opponents. And when they make some, you know, very dangerous charges, you get Unleash Hell from Auric Hearthguard, which is pretty decent now. And the fact, you know, they're still hitting on fives, but it's still, you know, it can be scary for monsters because all of a sudden they could, you know, potentially be really gimped a little bit. And one of the big changes about that army is it plays less, as it doesn't have to castle as much as it used to in 2.0, because now it's more MSU design and the way it feels in 3.0. And it also became a lot harder to kill. Like a Battlesmith buffing up a block of Auric Hearthguard Berserker with, you know, all that defense and the fact that they have a 4-up shrug near heroes, like they're easily becoming like, you could, if actually, let me do the math here. If you really want to go all out, how many +1 saves could you give a block of Earthguards? +1 for the Battlesmith, +1 for all out defense, +1 for Prayer of Ash, which is a prayer from the book, and then +1 from an Auric Smitter on Magma Drop once per game. Like, you could give +4 armor saves to a Hearthguard block. Now, granted, they can only go up to a 4-up save, but, you know, netting out all the rend is pretty powerful. Especially on top of that, they have, you know, a 4-up shrug. So normally are they, in a sense, ethereal at a 4-up, but they also get a 4-up shrug. So incredibly powerful and defensive mechanics. So the problem comes down to, how do you design the list for battle tactics? I think most lists are going to be 1 Magma Drop because you want monsters takeover. And a Rune Father on a Magma Drop is actually a decent investment if you're not Hermdar, because he has an immune to Battle Shock aura. You're going to see more Orcs because they're just good all-around unit now for deep striking purposes. And you're still going to see a lot of Hearthguard Berserkers, but you're probably going to see them in 10-man units. And finally, probably going to see a lot more Gotrek. But that's just the you know, end result of the addition changes, and the fact that everybody wants to play with big monsters, and Gotrek is just such a good counter to that kind of play style. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this review of the changes for Fyreslayers from 2.0 to 3.0. You know, once again, like and subscribe, as Mr. Alex would say. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the next recording, the next episode. Once, you know, I love Fyreslayers. I really want to play them again, but I gotta finish. I want to play every Dwarven faction first. So, all right, guys, see you next time.